So you were talking about how, the reason that grief and death and everything is so painful is because of the fall of man and sin.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an amazing opportunity for us to explain what the solution is to that, right?
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, yes, we all have evidence, whether you believe that there's a God or not, we all have evidence that there is pain and there's suffering in the world. I will tee you up where Jesus comes into play on sin came into the world. This is why we experience suffering and death. Where's our hope, Curtis?
Oh, absolutely. If you don't have a relationship with Christ, if you don't have hope of eternity, and again, I'm still learning. I've been a Christian since I was a kid, and I asked Jesus into my heart at the age of 7. I asked him to sanctify me at the age of 21. I've been in church and in church ministry and, in Christian school ministry my whole adult life. And so I know all the words, right? But until you experience the hard things of life, do you really, truly know where your strength and your peace and your hope comes from? And it's in those really, really hard places that, your faith is lived out, is breathed out, is experienced. We've talked about the experience of grief. Well, the experience of a relationship with God and with Christ comes out, really comes out during these times. You can say all the right things, do all the right things, but when you go through hard things and realize the only hope, the only strength, the only peace you're ever going to have is in the person of Christ. Told somebody, I can't imagine going through these hard things without the hope of heaven or the hope of God. If you don't have that, I just mentally, I can't even process what that would be like. This is hard. As a Christian, this is hard stuff. You can't imagine what it would be like without the hope of heaven and without the hope of Christ. And can't even imagine.
Well, so, and in specific, me and my wife were in Galatians today. We were in Galatians 3, I think, and basically Paul is just talking about the works-based faith versus saved by grace through faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was explaining that, for lack of better words, he was basically saying, if you're believing in your works of you being a good person, that's not gonna get you to heaven. If you're believing that God is real, that's not gonna get you to heaven. If you're believing that Jesus lived, that's not gonna get you to heaven. What gets us to heaven is realizing that, yes, sin entered the world, and this is a messy, messy place, but the God of heaven came down in the form of Jesus, the baby that lived the human life and died for our sins. And the only way for us to
bled and suffered and grieved, did all the things so he could look us in the face and say, I've been there.
Yes. And in dying for our sins now has bridged the gap for us to say, Christians don't have to deal with death, right? So death on earth, yes, we all do. But Christians don't have to deal with eternal death. And I'll never forget, Sean McDowell said something so good. I don't want to botch this. He's a Christian apologist. He basically said that there's this existential crisis everywhere. Everyone's like, okay, who is God? All these religions are teaching all these different things. He's like, well, there's only one religion that solves the problem of sin and suffering and death, and that is Christianity. Because we believe in an eternity. We believe in an eternity where there's no more pain, no more suffering, and it's all because it's in heaven with Christ. And so as we say this, like you say, we all have the Christian words to say, Jesus died for you, whatever, but sometimes you gotta just stop and be like, wait a second. My faith and my hope is in trusting that Jesus died for my sins, covered my sins. It's not how good of a person I am and how much I give to different organizations. It's our true trust and faith God took it all so we can be in heaven. Awesome.
Well, we have a lot more to cover.
We
so
do.
I think we're going to be doing another episode or so.
Definitely. We have, and to tee people up, we're going to talk about planning funeral. We're going to talk about life insurance. We're going to talk about these ruthlessly practical things. And please, as we continue, drop in the comments below. What are some things that you want to hear regarding these practical ways of preparing for grief?